Hello and welcome to Moments of Truth on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes. Bad news, everyone! Our ally in the good fight against the Tories, Vorderman, has been well and truly cancelled by the BBC for the crime of speaking her mind on social media. If she was a right-winger, no pearl would go unclutched, but she's not. So let the hypocrisy flow. Carol is a regular host of BBC Radio Wales on Saturday mornings, but today she released a statement saying she's been given the boot. The BBC wants her to shut up, and she, quite rightly, doesn't want to shut up. She wrote, "The BBC recently introduced new social media guidelines, which I respect. However, despite my show being light-hearted with no political content, it was explained to me that as a weekly show in my name, the new guidelines would apply to all and any content I posted all year round. Since these non-negotiable changes to my radio contract were made, I've ultimately found I'm not prepared to lose my voice on social media, change who I am, or lose the ability to express the strong beliefs I hold about the political turmoil this country finds itself in. My decision has been to continue to criticise the current UK government for what it has done to this country, which I love. And I'm not prepared to stop. I was brought up to fight for what I believe in and will carry on." Queen. Consequently, I have now breached the new guidelines and BBC Wales management have decided I must leave. Let's just take a moment to consider the ramifications of this policy. Presumably, no comedian who has ever tweeted something mean about the Tories can now host a panel show. No musician who's ever been on an anti-Brexit march can now host a radio show on BBC Six Music. No beloved naturalist can be seen at an international summit supporting the work of Greta Thunberg. There's a word for this kind of thing: McCarthyism. The hypocrisy on display here by the BBC is rank. Don't forget, throughout the entire Brexit debacle, the guy they had as the main anchor person on the BBC's flagship politics show was none other than that privately educated toxic slug, Andrew Neil, who, for the whole time he was working for the BBC, was also the editor of The Spectator magazine, a far-right publication filled to the brim with libertarian Tufton Street Tory propaganda served with a side dish of undying devotion to the cruelty and indifference of unfettered capitalism and the almighty market. Apparently that was okay, but the BBC draws the line at having a presenter on regional radio who occasionally tweets the truth about what our right-wing littered overlords are up to. It is also worth noting that Laura Kunsberg, the privately educated BBC political editor all through Brexit and Boris Johnson's reign of error, not only comes across as massively right-wing, but she's now undoubtedly a Boris Johnson fangirl, as well as an unquestioning amplifier of whatever Machiavellian bullshit Dominic Cummings wanted to place in the public domain from one day to the next, sources tell me. During the 2019 general election, Kunsberg tweeted that a Labour activist had punched a Conservative aide at a hospital. That was not true. And the only time Tory MPs have ever been properly held to account on a BBC Sunday morning show is when Victoria Derbyshire is presenting it. But this comes as little surprise when you look at who the Tories have put in charge at the BBC. Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, privately educated of course, unsuccessfully ran to be a Tory councillor. Impartial. Former BBC chairman Richard Sharp, also privately educated, was forced to resign earlier this year after it emerged that he had facilitated a massive £800,000 loan for his old chum Boris Johnson. Impartial. Robbie Gibb, Theresa May's former communications director who helped found GBBs, was appointed to the BBC board by Boris Johnson's government in 2021. His brother Nick is a Tory MP. Nice. Also, impartial. Considering they are pretty much every newspaper mindlessly spewing out their vile propaganda, not to mention Talk TV and Gamma Box News, the fact that the Tories have an outsized amount of influence on the BBC explains why, whenever they have an expert on to talk about something, they feel compelled to also have some posh right-wing dickhead on spouting nonsense for balance. Impartial. Meanwhile, over at GBB's, Tory MPs interview each other about government policy. Impartial! Don't like it? Tough. There's little point in complaining about the bias at Gamma Box News, as the top people at Ofcom are also in the private school mafia. It's almost as if, in 2023, a network of sinister old boys runs the UK. A metropolitan elite, if you will. All this means that in the UK, the Tories effectively control the means of communication. This means they can get away with murder. Or in the case of Boris Johnson, mass murder, letting the bodies pile high. Older voters tend to accept this because they don't know any better. Everything they see, everything they read, everything they listen to has been filtered through a small army of Tory spin doctors with one objective: keep the Tories in power forever. This is one of the reasons why we at Labour Social are trying so hard to push Labour towards using social media more effectively, because it's really the only way of getting their message across to voters without their words being twisted by sleazy operatives and demonic familiars of the Tory party. If you'd like to support our ongoing campaign to help Labour annihilate the Tories in the next election and then hold Labour to account once they're in power, please consider subscribing to this channel, or if you're feeling generous, there's a Patreon link in the description below. What do you think? Feel free to leave a comment. I do actually read them.